Well, as we've been going through the book of Exodus, this is a story about how God uses Moses to deliver his people, the people of Israel, out of slavery and then to the brink of the promised land. And so, the 30,000-foot view, that's the view. And actually, everything that has been leading up to this, right? Moses was, there was an edict that because the Israelites were getting too powerful, edict by Pharaoh to kill all of the baby boys, to throw them into the Nile. Moses was one of them. He was thrown into the Nile, but drawn out by Pharaoh's daughter and raised up in Pharaoh's court. And then as he gets older, he kills an Egyptian who's abusing an Israelite, and so then he flees. And after he flees, years later, God speaks to him through a burning bush and says, I want you to go back to Egypt, and I want you to deliver my people. Paraphrasing what Moses says, I tried that already with one. It didn't go well. That's why I'm here. And so going back to deliver millions of them is probably not going to go well at all. And God says, yeah, so you're going to go to Egypt, and you're going to go to Pharaoh. I'm going to harden his heart so that everybody knows that it's by my mighty hand that the people of Israel are being delivered. The mighty hand of the Lord is going to meet the hard heart of Pharaoh so that the story is told thousands of years later in a warehouse space thousands of miles away, right? And we're still talking about God's mighty hand in the book of Exodus because of that. But in the middle of all of this, we get some genealogy. And truth be told, as we originally had like laid out how the text goes, and for sermons, it was this was going to be last week, but in sermon prep, there was just too much, and so instead of keeping you too long, I said let's break this part off into a separate week so that we can talk just about genealogy. Now, here's the danger with that: is that if you're unfamiliar with the Bible, you don't know much about the Bible, you're 90% sure that 90% of it is just genealogy. And you go, and so we cover a passage like this and go, and this is why I don't read the Bible, because it's all of this. And I go, well, first of all, it's not all of this, right? We see sections of this, and those parts are important. If you open up the book, for instance, you open up the book of Matthew, it starts with genealogy. And so it's actually interesting that Exodus doesn't start with genealogy. It kind of just jumps into the story. We don't get the genealogy until chapter 6. And I think part of that is it's a way for Moses to slow down the story. Because next week is going to be the story where he goes in with the staff and it turns into a serpent, and then Pharaoh's magicians replicate that miracle. And so, but right before all that, and then it goes straight into the plagues. We get sort of a pause, and the pause is genealogy. And so with that being said, I think that genealogy is it's important. And it's important for a few reasons. One of the reasons why it's important is because it's a good reminder that these are real people in real places at real times. It's easy for us to think these are just, they're just characters in a made-up story. They're not. These are real people in real places at real times. And so much so that Moses himself can almost become like a caricature, right? But no, he was a real person, real place, real time. He had family, right? The other thing that the genealogy reminds us is that the genealogy reminds us that the book, the Bible obviously is the Word of God, but it also serves as a historical document, right? It's a document of history. We have made discoveries based on the history of the Bible, and genealogy reminds us the Bible is also a book of history, and it tells the history not just of world history, but of certain families. And like all genealogy, it tends to be boring unless you see your name in there, right? The genealogy would be important if it was your genealogy, right? Which leads me into my last reason. There's more reasons, but the last reason why I think genealogy is important is also a good reminder that the Bible is going to shock you, but the Bible is not about you. You're not the main character of the Bible. And it's interesting because we come across genealogy, we're like, okay, boring. What am I like? What does this have anything to do with me? And go, here's the beautiful point. Oh, it does, but nothing, right? If the Bible's not about you, and we should not only find it to be important when it has something that's speaking to us directly. And so it's also a good reminder that the Bible isn't about you. It's not about me. It's not even actually about the people in the story. But these are people that lived. Real hopes, real dreams, real promises to God. Faithful. And we'll see some unfaithful people here this morning. And so before we get started, I want you to think about your own family tree. Oh no. Thanksgiving's coming up. What does your family tree look like? It's not really a tree, Josh. It's more like a tumbleweed, I think. It just kind of spirals. What does your family tree look like? Parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins. Of your family tree, who do you think, if we were to ask you, who do you think brings the most honor to your family? Me? No, not you. Somebody else. Somebody else in your family tree. Who else in your family tree do you think brings great honor to your family? Sort of a similar question then. Who in your family tree do you think brings shame to your family? When you think about your family tree, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, your grandfather, your grandmother, great-grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, who would you say they have brought dishonor to the family? In fact, actually, when somebody asks you about, do you have a dad or a mom, or do you have a grandparent, or do you have a cousin, you're like, yeah, you like to talk about all of them except for this one. And if anybody that you know knows them and says, isn't so-and-so a part of your family? Like, well, okay, technically yes. But, there's always a but. The decisions they've made, the dishonor they have brought, that is not indicative of our family. And there's great shame. And truth be told, you should be able to pick out some people in your own family, right? Here are some people that brought some honor to the family. Here are some people that brought some shame to the family. And so the beautiful thing that we're going to see this morning is we're going to see both of those. Both people that brought honor to the family and people that brought shame to the family. And then also, by the way, a lot of people that we don't know. And so, if you got your Bibles, open up to Exodus chapter 6, verse 14. And I'm going to read some of the verses that you really hope that you never get assigned in a Bible study. Would you read these following passages? If it's Exodus 6, you're like, no, I will not. Verse 14 says this. These are the heads of their fathers' houses, the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, and Hanak, and Palu, and Hezron, and Carmi. These are the clans of Reuben. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel, and Jamin, and Ohad, and Jachin, and Zohar, and Shaul. The sons of the Canaanite women, these are the clans of Simeon. These are the names of the sons of Levi according to their generations. Gershon, and Kohath, and Merari. The years of the life of Levi being 137 years. The sons of Gershon, Libni, and Shimei, by their clans. The son of Kohath are Amram, and Ishar, and Hebron, and Uzziel. The years of the life of Kohath being 133 years. The sons of Merari are Mahli and Mushai. These are the clans of the Levites according to their generations. And so, sure, you've heard of Moses and Aaron, but have you heard of Gershon and Kohath and Merari? Of course you're not. That's why people are like, Josh, you must love to play like Bible trivia games. I'm like, no, I hate them. And I hate them, and here's why I hate them. Because I'm expected to know the answer. So if I know the answer, like, of course you knew that answer, right? And of course you knew that answer. But if you're like, who are the sons of Levi? I'm like, I don't know. Like, you don't know that answer? Like, it's always a lose-lose situation. You don't know, you don't know the tales of Gershon and Kohath and Merari. Now, if you're looking at, and this is really going to trace the sons of Levi. Remember, Levi is one of the 12 tribes. And out of the tribe of Levi is going to come all of your priests. And actually, more specifically, out of the line of Aaron, right? Because Aaron and Moses, they're Levites. Out of the line of Aaron, all of the priests are going to come out of the line of Aaron. And all of the Levites, for the most part, their job is going to be in charge of what's later on going to be the tabernacle. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the tabernacle, in Israel today, in Jerusalem, there sits what's called the Temple Mount. On the Temple Mount is where you would see the Dome of the Rock, or the very large gold dome that you see when you see a picture of Jerusalem. In Jesus' day, that was not there. There would have been the temple, and there the temple would have existed. Inside the temple was the holies of holies. You'd have the Ark of the Covenant, which was seen as being synonymous with the presence of God. Right now, by the time of Jesus, the Ark of the Covenant is already gone. It disappeared. It fell off the map. We don't know where. I know you're like, yes, it's a warehouse somewhere. We know that. We know where it's at now. We don't. It just sort of disappears. Anyways, but that was the temple, and really the temple plays the same thing as everywhere. Is in a lot of religions, right? Which is the temple is where heaven meets earth. Right? And so that's actually very interesting that Jesus says something like, I am the temple, right? That Jesus is the temple. He says, because this is where now heaven and earth come together. Now, before there was a physical building in Jerusalem, as you know now, that building has been destroyed, and so it is no longer in existence. But before that was built, Solomon built that temple. David's the one that brought the ark to Jerusalem. But before all of that, right, before there was even any of this, we're going to see that the ark is built in the wilderness. They're going to have a tabernacle, and this tabernacle was a pop-up. It would be popped up and built, and as Israel moved through the wilderness, they would take it back down, and then they would move it, and then they would set it back up, and they would keep on doing this essentially until the temple is going to be built in Jerusalem. So for a very long time. Now with this temple, I think about back in Northside's days when it begins. We began as a church plant, which meant that we set up and tore down every single Sunday. Brian was on that team, were you not, Brian? Brian was on that team. I'm not sure who else was on that team. I know Brian was on that team. And it's a big deal. You come to churches at 11 o'clock, you show up at 8 o'clock, and you start pulling out chairs and rolling in sound booths, and you got that team. And the same thing, after church is done, you got to put it all back in the box. I was a part of a church plant in Atwater, and the same thing. Every Sunday, rolling out chairs, setting up sound systems, putting up projectors, and then every Sunday, putting it back in the box. It's a lot of work. And so that's kind of essentially what it would have been like, even more so. And what we see now is we see this Gershon, this Kohath, and this Merari are a part of this. And actually, we see as the tabernacle is built that they're given tasks. And so we're going to put it up on the screen. You don't have to turn there, but Gershon, in Numbers chapter 3, verse 25 and 26, says this, and the guard duty of the sons of Gershon in the tent of the meeting involved the tabernacle, the tent with its covering, right? So this is the canvas, the screen of the entrance of the tent of meeting, the hangings of the court, the screen for the door of the court that is around the tabernacle and altar and its cords, all the service connected with these. So everything, like a lot of the fabric, they go, hey, the Gershon, the clan, the ones that come out of this family, they're in charge of these things. And so they're in charge of the cloth, of the fabrics that were associated with the temple. And then Kohath, this is in Numbers chapter 3, verse 31, 32, so just a few verses later, and it says, and their guard duty involved the ark. Oh, the Ark of the Covenant, right? The table, the lampstand, the altars, the vessels of the sanctuary with its priests, ministers, and the screen. All service connected with these. And Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, was to be chief over the chiefs of the Levites and have oversight of those who kept guard over the sanctuary. So the clan of Kohath, they were in charge of the temple furniture, right? One of which was the Ark of the Covenant. So if somebody's carrying the Ark in the Bible, it's probably from the family of Kohath. And they would get the poles, and they would move everything. So as they would move, this clan is in charge of getting all the cloth, the canvas, the temple, the coverings. This one's in charge of all the furniture, and then the clan of Merari Numbers 3, verse 36 and 37. By the way, you can go later on and read Numbers 3 all by yourself. And it's riveting. It's riveting. And appointed guard duty of the sons of Merari involved the frames of the tabernacle, the bars, the pillars, the bases, and all their accessories, all the service connected with these, also the pillars around the court with their bases and pegs and cords. So they were in charge of the structure. So here you have like this very important building, the temple, the tabernacle, is that one clan is in charge of all the cloth, the other is in charge of all of the furniture, and then the other is in charge of all of the structure of this. And every time they would move, each of the families would do their thing. Now, just when you think, I don't think genealogy can get any more like riveting and exciting. Then you hear about how they moved a temple and they had boom, they were in charge of the cloth. This is why I come on Sunday mornings. They were in charge of the structure. Oh, yeah. Right? Here's the thing, right? Not super interesting. Not super riveting. But I will tell you this. Isn't it interesting? In the middle of this fantastic story of Moses, the burning bush, the staff that turns into a snake, the leprosy that comes and then disappears, going into the most powerful man in the world and telling him, let your slave labor go. We get this story here. People you've never heard of doing jobs you didn't even know about. And did you know this? That 99% of ministry is being done by people you've never heard of doing jobs you didn't know about. And I love how what Moses does is he honors those people. Truth be told, we are enthralled with the fantastical, aren't we? We are a celebrity kind of culture. We want to know more about Moses. We want to know more about Aaron. And I go, yeah, but did you know who Moses and Aaron wanted you to know about? Are these people. The Gershons and the Meraris and the Kohaths of the Bible. In reality, do you know this, is that for several thousand years now, although there's big names in the Bible, the Davids, the Daniels, the Elijahs, the Moseses, right, the Noahs, the New Testament, the Jesuses, the Pauls, the Matthews, the Peters. But did you know this? That 99% of the kingdom moving forward is being done by people you've never heard of, doing jobs you didn't know about. By the way, that's true for us, We think, what's today? Today's Donut Sunday. How does Donut Sunday even happen? You go, I don't know. The donut elves show up and they just magically donuts appear. John and Mary, by the way, they go and they pick up the donuts. Every donut, they put the order in some middle of the week, and then they go pick up the donuts. 8 dozen of them? 8 dozen of them? 9 dozen of them. 9 dozen. You guys are some donut eaters. 9 dozen donuts. They pick them up so that when you get here, you go like, where's my donut? Where's my donut? Where's my donut? Right? But it's not just that, right? Like Chris and Nancy and Candy, they get here early. They put out the hospitality table, right? Zachary Kepke, he makes a lot of the coffee. Nancy makes the coffee. Zach Kepke has been making the coffee. And by the way, the beautiful thing about Zachary is he doesn't. I never even asked him. His sister Katie was making it, and she went off to college. And then Zachary just picked up where the family left off, right? And he's just started making the coffee. The people back in the sound booth, David, Jeremy, Pius, Adam, Andrew, they just serve back there. And a lot of times you don't even know they're even back there until something goes wrong. Like, what are they doing back there? Playing, what are they doing back there? Like, it's, they're not paying attention. The words aren't even up. Like, they know the words aren't up. They know the words aren't up, right? You see the people up front. You see the people that would lead worship, right? They do the worship team. You see, obviously, me. But there's a lot of people behind the scenes. There are a lot of people here that that open their homes. That you didn't. People open. Yeah, they open their homes for Bible studies. Other people here they open their homes for different events. Some of them host the Bible studies. Maybe I don't know this, but like Nancy's come for the last at least 20 years, every Tuesday to the church at 9 a.m. to count the offering. And countless more. 99% of ministry done in this world is done by people you don't know doing jobs you didn't know about. And here's the thing. You go, well, I know them. I go, yes, of course you know. Well, some of you know them. Yes, of course. Why? Because you're in community with them. But know this. There's thousands of other churches in the world right now. Those same jobs are being filled by other people. And guess what? You don't know them. The kingdom of God is being moved forward by people you don't know about doing jobs you don't know about. And so I love this. You go, well, what do I don't know these people. Yeah, I know you don't know them. But you know what they did? Somebody had to tear down that tent. Somebody had to take down the tabernacle. Somebody had to take the cloth. Somebody had to take the furniture. And they were all doing their job. And so in the story, God uses Moses to deliver the people of Israel out of slavery from the Egyptians. And that's the headline. But it's not the whole story. Verse 20, it goes on. And Amram took his wife, Jochebed, and his father's sister, and she bore him Aaron and Moses. The years of life of Amram were being 137 years. Like, so his dad married his aunt. You go, yeah, all right. They're sons of Izhar, or Korah, and Nepheg, and Zachri. The sons of Uzziel are Mishael, and Elzaphan, and Sithri. And Aaron took his wife Elisheba, the daughter of Aminadab, and the sister of Nahshon, and she bore him Nadab, and Abihu, and Eleazar, and Ithamar. If nothing else, you will get some names for your next child this morning. You don't see a lot of those running around, right? Talks about Korah. Did you see that? He's one of the sons of Izhar. Korah is going to become important in number 16, where if the other ones were to bring honor, like they're faithful servants. They're just faithful servants. Did you even know that they existed before this morning? Nope. They are faithful servants, though. They bring honor to the family. Korah tells us a story that brings shame to the family. Korah, you can read it. Actually, this is really a very interesting story. You can read it in number 16. But Korah actually he starts a rebellion. So number 16, there's a rebellion. They're tired of being in the wilderness, and it specifically says to Korah, he's tired of the fact that Aaron and Moses are getting all the attention. Who do they think that they are? Why did they get all the attention? Why did they get to make all the decisions? And so Korah, he starts a rebellion. And he rebels, he rises up against Moses and Aaron and their authority in the wilderness. And it's a beautiful story, and I love what Moses does. Moses does not just squash him. He basically just says, all right, well, I hear your concerns. I'm paraphrasing now. I hear your concerns. Let's see who the Lord has put into charge. And circumventing a story now, so making it a little bit shorter, is that God has the earth open up and swallow up the whole family of Korah. Who do you think God's with? And then all of those that were in the rebellion got consumed by fire. It's interesting that Moses did not need to defend his spiritual authority. God did. And he says, you want to rebel against my elect. The earth opens up. And this is why we go, man, he went Old Testament on him. Like, yeah, he did go Old Testament on him. The earth opens up. The fire consumes. Yeah, I know I've told the story before. There have been a couple times in ministry where I go, some things have happened, people rebelling or like trying to like strong arm God's people or abuse God's people, and God takes care of it in a way that's seems like supernatural. Because God's more concerned about and more committed to his church than anybody else. So anyways, so it swallows them all up. And so what we see here is we actually see this family tree that has a cautionary tale. Don't be like Korah. Now, thinking about your own families, right? You have people in your family, right, that they're cautionary tales. Don't be like them. And so I love this family tree because here's like, hey, be like them. They're faithful servants. We also have people in our family that they're cautionary tales. Don't be like them. And we see here, don't be like this. And so what would we learn from Korah? One, because what it was basically he was saying, why do Moses and Aaron get all of the play? Everyone's all excited about them, but what about me? And I thought as I was preparing for this, when you try to wrestle power from others so that your name is lifted up, you have set yourself on the path of destruction. When you wrestle power from other people so that your name is lifted up, you have set yourself on a path of destruction. Now, we have a lot of people in a lot of powerful places that have done just that. And I go, yeah, and I stand by my statement. The other thing that I want you to see here is to resent and to rebel against those who God has placed in authority over you is also sets you on the path of destruction. Now, I don't know if God's going to have the earth open up and swallow you. I don't know. I know that's on him. But just know that we're responsible to those who God has placed authority over us. This is, by the way, politically. This is also spiritually. Right? And not that there's not reasons to push back or to speak against, but to resent and rebel against those who God has placed in authority over you is to set on a path of destruction. Yeah. And so we see in this tree of faithfulness and unfaithfulness. The tree of this family tree of these clans that were basically setting up and tearing down the temple and moving it around. But then this Korah who all he wanted to do was have his own power. But it goes on in verse 24. And by the way, there's lots of names that we're not even talking about. 24, then the sons of Korah, Asir and Elkanah, and Abiasaph, these are the clans of the Korhites. Eleazar, Aaron's son, took as his wife one of the daughters of Putiel, and she bore him Phinehas. Oh, you're like, oh, finally a name I know, Phinehas. That's only because of Phineas and Ferb. And so that's the only reason. Oh man, I know that name though. All right, these are the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites by their clans. There's an interesting story about Phinehas. You can read about this one, and I would encourage you to do so in Numbers 25. In Numbers 25, it tells the story of Phinehas. What's happening is that now the Israelites, they're coming to the end of their journey in the wilderness. And they're in their last spot before they're actually going to move into the land and take it in the book of Joshua. So their last encampment. There it says that they were basically the men of Israel were being with the women of Midian. In other words, the Israelites were engaging in sex with the Midianites. It could have been through marriage. It could have been just having sex, so fornication. But whatever happened is that there's a commingling. And sometimes people read those kinds of stories and go, oh, see, God's, and unfortunately in history, people use those to say that God's against interracial things. They go, that's not what's happening there or in the Bible. What's happening is that is that the Israelites worship the God of the Israelites. And when you engage in other religions, right, you engage in other, like the Midianites, they worship a different God. And so in engaging with them, then a lot of times what happens is they start worshiping their gods. The example that I would give today is that a Christian should not be marrying a non-Christian. One of the reasons why is because you are worshiping different gods. It's not a good thing. It'll cause a problem. And so often what happened in these cultures, they would have sex, and then they would worship the other god, and as a result of worshiping the other god, they would engage in sex, right? That there's idolatry, that the sexual immorality was almost always birthed out of the idolatry. So there's this idolatry, worshiping other gods. Out of that is birthed the sexual immorality. And you go, oh, Josh, that's different in our culture, because our culture, sexual immorality is not birthed out of idolatry. I go, yeah, it is, 100%. Yeah, we could have that discussion later on, not here, but yes, our culture, sexual immorality is birthed out of our idolatry. And so what was happening here in the story of Phineas is that there was a man by the name of Zimri. And Zimri brought in a Midianite woman, Cozbi, and it was engaging in sex. And the way that you read it, there is some confusion, but basically he brought her into the camp. What was happening before, it was they were leaving the camp to do this, and now he brought her into the camp. So in other words, before it was like, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but it doesn't actually stay in Vegas. But now this has been brought into the camp, and it's very clear. In fact, I would encourage you to read Numbers 25, a really fascinating story. And so in Numbers 25, so then brings into the camp, it says for everyone to see. In other words, this is in your face. And it says that Aaron saw it, that Moses saw it, and Phineas saw it. Is somebody going to do something about that? This is much more in your face than what was happening before. To give an example, because I was trying to think, how do we think? So if a husband, for instance, goes to Vegas, meets a woman that is not his wife, and has sex with her, he's been unfaithful to the marriage covenant. 100% he has. He's on a business trip in Vegas, meets a woman, has sex there. But would you agree, same act, but different than if a husband meets a woman, brings him into their house, and has sex with her on the marriage bed? Same act, but all of a sudden you're like, oh no. Why? Because one is, right, it's just so much more egregious. It's so much more in your face. Was somebody going to do something about this? Well, Phineas, I'll tell you what Phineas does. Talk about Golden Old Testament. You got to read the story. It's very fascinating. Phineas, basically, he's not going to take it. And so as the way they tell the story, and we're not sure if they're actually having sex in the tabernacle. It could be there. But Phineas says, no, I've had enough. He takes up a spear, and the way you read the text, by the way, it's not all PG, right? As you read the scriptures, it sounds as if as they're having sex, like they are in the act of sex, Phineas takes the spear and just goes through both of them, through the stomach, and kills them both. And you go, whoa. Yeah. Why? Because God takes this seriously. I mean, what we see here is that Phineas grabs the spear, pierces them while they're both in the act of sex, and what we see is an act of judgment and justice that satisfies the wrath of God. In other words, because there had been a plague, because sin is now in the camp, a plague has hit Israel, and it says that God's anger was satisfied because of the justice. And you go, well, we shouldn't be surprised by this because this is the gospel. But the beautiful thing about the gospel, right, God's anger towards sin was what we want, that results in an act of justice and judgment. That's the gospel. Except for in a beautiful way, it doesn't come to us. Who does it come to? It comes to Jesus, Right? So even in this act, when Phineas carries it out, there's something that satisfies the anger of God because there's been this justice that has come to these two. But actually, ultimately in the gospel, it doesn't come to us. Who does it come to? It comes to Jesus. And so even we see with Phineas the story of a passionate faithfulness and a commitment to purity and holiness, we'll see even greater in the story of Jesus. A man so passionate for God and his holiness that he was willing to act when no one else did. And so I love this family tree where we see a story or some stories of unknown faithfulness. We see a story of known faithlessness. I want to be known. And we see the story with zeal and for justice and for holiness. Verse 26. And these are the Aaron and Moses of whom the Lord said, bring out the people of Israel from the land of Egypt by their hosts. It was they who spoke to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, about bringing out the people of Israel from Egypt, and Moses and this Aaron. On the day when the Lord had spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, the Lord said to Moses, I am the Lord, tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, all that I say to you. But Moses said to the Lord, behold, I have an uncircumcised lips. How will Pharaoh listen to me? And I love that. These are the Aaron and Moses to whom the Lord said. It's these guys. I mean, we just read their sort of their mixed bag of genealogy. Some faithfulness, some brought honor, some are going to bring dishonor and shame, some were faithful, some had the zeal. It's just these guys. These guys, they don't come from kings. They don't come from queens. They just are regular guys. These two ordinary men from ordinary families who God does something extraordinary through. And I love this because there's this to each generation. I mean, you think about your generation. Whatever, generation X, Y, or Z, boomer, greatest generation, Gen X, go Gen X. We are like the proverbial middle child. Feels like the boomers are mad at the millennials and the Gen Xers are like, what do we do? But whatever generation you come from or you're in, the cool thing is that you come from somewhere and your line is going to go from somewhere. And the beautiful thing we find in this genealogy is that it both matters and doesn't matter. That God is in the business of taking ordinary men and women coming from ordinary families and doing something extraordinary through them and bringing honor to their family. And so may you think about the kind of story that God will tell in your generation through you. I mean, what if enough time goes by and they says, and they came from this family and then he was the son of this, and then your name pops up in that, and then we get to read about your story somewhere else. What will the story tell us? Will it tell us a story of unknown and unremembered faithfulness? A name that had been forgotten doing a job that nobody knew about? Will it tell us the story of rebellion where you just wanted to make a name for yourself and that's all that mattered? Will it tell us a story of your zeal and passion for the Lord and your willingness to act when nobody else would? I think it matters. And the good news for you and for me is that the Lord still tells these stories of ordinary men and women coming from ordinary families doing extraordinary things because of what he does. Let's pray. God, we thank you for your goodness. Some of us in this room, we are proud of where we've come from. Others of us in this room, we are ashamed of, embarrassed maybe of where we've come from. And the beautiful thing is that it both matters and doesn't matter. Because to each generation, you're doing a new work. And so no matter what generation we find ourselves in this morning, I pray that we would, in that generation, in this generation, that we would live as faithful men and women, whether people know our name or not. Whether we do a job that nobody even knows about. May we believe that we are moving forward your kingdom. God, may the work that you do in and through us, ordinary men and women, coming from ordinary families, that you would do something extraordinary through us that would move your kingdom forward and bring honor to our families. We got to pray for those in this room that maybe they have felt like they have brought shame on their family. I pray a couple of things this morning for them specifically. One, that you would remind them that the story is not over. That shame in a moment, shame in history is not shame eternally. And I pray that you would speak to them and invite them into a story of redemption, that you can redeem it in such a way that would bring honor to the family, and that you would be glorified. We thank you that you are a God who is far more committed to us than we are to you. And we are thankful that you tell a story that at the end of the day, that you are the hero, it's not us. It's not by Moses' mighty hand, it's not by Moses' mighty tongue that the people of Israel will be saved, but it's by your mighty hand. And that is still true today. We love you. We pray for these things in your name. Amen.